Good morning, Wesley Chapel Youth Group. I am so sorry. So I attempted to go live earlier this morning and my internet kicked me off. So I am going to do this take two. Please bear with me and forgive me. My name is Anya Evinger, and I am one of the 7th and 8th grade middle school teachers at Wesley Chapel United Methodist Church. I'm so excited to be here with you today to just learn more about Jesus. And if you tuned in earlier, I am going to start from the very beginning so that I can post this video later. I'm sorry that it got cut off after 10 minutes, and we're going to pray that technology works this morning so that we can continue learning together. So a couple of the announcements that I made at the end of the video that you missed is that if you are not connected to us, you may get connected to us on Wesley Chapel United Methodist Church Facebook page. We actually have a Facebook page specifically for our youth, and we come to you with questions and just information on there. And of course, Pastor Peter is offering Bible study on Wednesday night through Zoom. And then on Friday night, he's doing game night. So it's just a great way to stay connected and to know what's going on. This week, we are in week 3 of our series, In My Opinion. And our bottom line today is that there's more to others than just our opinions of them. So please join me in learning about Jesus. If you don't have a Bible close by, you might want to grab it. We're going to look at the book of John today. If you want to go ahead and open up to John. Let me start by asking you a question. Does your school have cliques? You know, those groups of people who all seem to stick together. Those groups of people who bond together based on things they have in common. At my school, there was the band clique. I was in it. That's right, Delaney, state champs. We had the sports clique, but we actually had like different cliques within the sports clique. Like I played soccer, so I was part of the soccer girls, but we had the volleyball girls. And we had even like with the guys, they had different cliques. Like they had the basketball clique and the wrestling clique. So you have the sports clique, which really is broken up in smaller cliques. And the smart kids clique, which the Toby mentioned that they're now called awesome, which is great because when I was in high school, they were the nerds and not as awesome, but I was a proud member of that too. We even have the church kids clique, you know, like the yay, I love Jesus clique, and they kneel at their locker and pray every morning. So we have all these different cliques, and most of these cliques are based on who you identify with or who people identify with, and they're usually from like they form from a common experience, right? So like everybody's in band together, so they're one clique. At my high school, we had the farm boys had truck row is what they called it. And they parked all of their trucks by the tennis court, and they had like a space between every other truck. And they were usually late because they were helping at the farm. And you knew when it was farm season because there weren't as many trucks. Like, see, you can tell I'm not a farmer. I guess it's like harvest. You could tell when it was harvest time because they weren't at school. They were helping on the farm. Well, you might get along great and have a ton in common with people in your clique, so the group that you identify with. You might have a lot of strong opinions about the people in other cliques, the ones who are different than you. And when I was in middle school, so the summer between 7th and 8th grade, we moved to a new church because in the Methodist church, the ministers moved every so often. And in my middle school years, we moved from Liston, Indiana to Brazil, Indiana. Now, remember that this was before social media. So I didn't have TikTok and I didn't have Facebook and I didn't have any way to meet new people online, right? The way you met new people is you went to activities and were introduced. So we moved in July, and Caleb and I were actually talking about this the other day because he was like, when did our relationship get stronger? And I'm like, dude, when you were 6 months old. Because when he was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I would sit in my room and hold him and cry. Like, there's nothing better than holding a baby, and it would just bring so much comfort. But I would just cry because I missed my friends, and I hadn't made a new group of friends yet. You know, I went to church with a few kids my age, but they already had their group of friends, and besides, they were boys. They didn't want anything to do with a new girl. So it was a really hard transition. And when I started school in August, because we started later back then, I started forming judgments about other people. I looked at the cliques around me. And there was one clique in particular that I really just was very judgmental about. I didn't like them. I thought they were rude and mean. And they were a group of boys that were athletes. They came across to me as arrogant, and they would laugh in the hallway all the time. Like, I just assumed they were making fun of people because they were always laughing and cracking jokes and different things. I never really heard their conversations, but I just knew that I found them to be rude. They were not at school to learn like I was. They were at school to play football, basketball, and do track. And learn was just a side effect. So there were about 4 or 5 of them. And even in high school, my opinion of them didn't change. One of the guys, because most of the guys weren't in my class, but one of the guys was, and he would complain about things. And I just found him to be arrogant, and I didn't like that. I thought he was very, very rude, not someone I wanted to be around. So we're going to stop the story there. I'll come back to it later. I promise there's an ending to it. But here's the truth. We all have and form opinions about other people. So as an 8th grader, sitting in my school cafeteria, I was forming opinions about these new people I'd never met before and really had never talked to. And even now, sometimes I still form opinions about other people based on assumptions that I have. It's easy for us sometimes to form opinions or assume we know things to be true about people who are different than us. So because we don't run around with the same group, or because we don't have the same interests and activities, they're different, and we form opinions about them. We don't know them that well, but we definitely think we do. And what we think to be true of them becomes our opinion of who they are. So I love the reality TV shows, not like The Bachelor or Big Brother. I don't watch those. But the reality TV shows that bring somebody in who is just a normal person and discover a talent, a hidden talent. And that person goes from being like a waitress in New York to releasing a CD within a year. And so my personal favorite is The Voice. And the reason I love The Voice is because you don't, like, the judges who are turning their chairs, they don't see the person. So they are not making a judgment on the way they look or act or mannerisms. They are simply making a judgment on the voice. My husband, on the other hand, loves America's Got Talent. And I think he loves America's Got Talent for the shock factor. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, they're doing the backstory and they're interviewing the person and they've got this talent. And you're like, there is no way this kid can sing. No way. Like, who do they think they are? And then they get out on stage and they shock everybody. You're sitting there in the living room and your mouth drops because you're just like, wow, how is that beautiful sound coming from this person? And you can tell the judges are shocked and the audience is shocked and we're shocked at home. But that's why he loves it, because people form opinions and then they realize they were wrong. Think for a minute about the cliques in and around your school. You probably have assumptions or opinions about each and every one of them. Sure, you don't spend as much time with people that are different than you, people who aren't in your clique. But you've still made some pretty big assumptions about those people, haven't you? The rich kids are. All the people on the sports team are. The smart kids are. Those cheerleaders are. Those band kids. I bet right now you're filling in each of these blanks with what you think you know about each one of these groups of people. We all do it. Even here at church, I bet you found yourself looking around and noticing cliques or groups of people that have thought things like, the kids who always comes to church are. Those students from that school always. Those kids from the younger grades are so. Again, we form opinions about these people based on our assumptions. And just like that, we think our opinions become fact. What's tricky is that those opinions or assumptions, they come from all kinds of places. Maybe you think something about a certain group of people because of a past experience. Maybe they bullied you or hurt you or embarrassed you or just weren't all that kind to you. Maybe you saw them act a certain way or do a certain thing. whatever it was, that experience shaped your opinion. Or maybe for you, it really is just an assumption. You don't actually know the things you believe or think about the person or group of people are true. You just think it might be true. Like in my case, that group of boys, they laughed all the time in the hall. I assumed they were making fun of people. Why else would you laugh in the hallway? And for you, maybe that assumption is enough to change your opinion. I know it is for me sometimes. Sometimes it's an opinion not based on an assumption, but based on jealousy or insecurity. Those other people have something that you want or wish you had. And because you don't, you have negative feelings or opinions about them. Whatever the reason, when it comes to people who are different than us, people who don't really understand, we let our judgments and opinions affect how we view them. And that's a problem for a lot of reasons. For starters, our judgments aren't usually nice and kind thoughts. We aren't typically describing people who don't really know with words like awesome or cool or fun to be around. Not only does that mean we're judging or seeing them negatively, but it also means we probably aren't going to give them a chance in the future. We've already made up our minds, right? We don't need to get to know them or learn anything else about them. In our minds, we already know who they are. But here's what I think we're missing. When we base our view of someone else on one experience or one opinion or one assumption, then we aren't seeing the whole story. We aren't seeing the whole person. And this is where we're going to turn our Bibles to the book of John. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It's the fourth book of the Bible. No, it's the fourth book of the New Testament. Excuse me. So we're going to turn to John chapter 8 for today's lesson. We're going to look at a story in the Bible that I think can help us change the way we see other people. It's found in the book of John, which is written by one of Jesus' closest friends and followers named, any guesses? Who wrote the book of John? You're right, it's John. John was one of the 12 men, the 12 disciples, who walked the closest with Jesus and learned from him during his ministry on earth. John wrote down what he actually saw, heard, and experienced as a follower of Jesus. And that's what we're going to look at today. When we pick up our story, Jesus was teaching to a group of people when several religious teachers interrupt him with a question. Okay, so he's standing in front of a group of people, he's teaching, and these religious leaders bring a woman to him and interrupt his teaching. All right, I think I'm back. It says that I have one follower or one person watching. Will you just put a comment that I'm still here? It's like every time I try to share scripture, it breaks out. So we're going to go back to John chapter 8, verse 4. So Jesus is teaching, and a woman is brought to him by religious leaders. And they make her stand in front of Jesus, and they say to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery. And the law of Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now, you say." Basically, these religious leaders came to Jesus with a question about a woman who was caught sleeping with someone who was not her husband. The religious leaders knew the rules. They understood what the law said. Back then, when someone was caught in the act of adultery, they were sentenced to being stoned. That basically means that people throw stones at you until you die. These religious leaders thought they knew exactly what Jesus was going to say about this woman. They were so sure that they interrupted his teaching to get the answer. And they just knew the answer was not only going to prove they were right about who this woman was, but also show how much better they were than she was. Now, can we all admit that we, like the religious leaders, have a tendency to think better of ourselves than we do about others? We tend to see what other people do or who they are much differently than the way we see ourselves. And because of that, we put space between us and them. We let our opinions and our judgments define who they are, and we slowly move ourselves away from them. That's certainly what these religious leaders were doing with this woman. And I think that's probably what they thought Jesus would do. But instead, Jesus did something I don't think anybody expected. So we're going to continue reading verses 7 and 8. When they kept on questioning Jesus, he straightened up and said to them, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Jesus challenged these religious leaders to look inward at themselves and their own sin instead of judging others. Jesus told them that the one who hadn't sinned, who had never messed up or made a mistake or done something wrong, was the only one who had the right to throw a stone at this woman. And as you can imagine, nobody there besides Jesus fell into that category. While they were standing there, the religious leaders felt convicted, and their argument was shut down completely. Instead of throwing stones like they'd planned, Jesus wrote that after they heard what Jesus said, they slipped away one by one. Soon it was only Jesus left standing with this woman. Here's what happened next. Verses 10 and 11. Jesus straightened up and he asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." While the religious leaders had judged this woman on only one thing they knew about her, Jesus saw something else. Jesus saw this woman so much more than one bad decision. She was so much more than just one opinion or judgment or experience. Jesus knew the whole story, and he loved her no matter what. Nobody in the story was really who everyone else thought they would be. Everyone judged this woman as bad, and Jesus showed that she was worthy of forgiveness and a future. And everyone judged these religious leaders as good, but Jesus showed that they were no better than the woman they came to stone. Because the truth is, we're all made in the image of God. That alone makes us worthy of his love and forgiveness. That's the way Jesus saw other people, and he calls us to see them in the same way. Jesus wants us to remember that there's more to others than just our opinions of them. So remember that story about the young men that I judged in 8th grade? I found out later that those guys are some of the most genuine, kind guys in the world. And I ended up marrying one of them. You see, God has a funny way of showing us the truth when we make our own assumptions. And as I got to know Joey Evinger, I realized that he would do anything to help his neighbor. And I realized all that laughter is because he finds joy in everything in life, not because he's making fun of people. You see, in my past experiences, when people were laughing, it was because they were making fun of me. But Joey proved that wrong. He showed that laughter is a beautiful part of life that doesn't have to come at another person's expense. And one of his other friends, the friend that I had classes with, I thought was arrogant, he's now a special ed teacher. We've had wonderful conversations on the back deck, drinking coffee, talking about the students that he is striving to take care of and the work that he dedicates his life to, taking care of the vulnerable. You see, when we reduce someone to just one judgment or opinion, it causes us to miss so much. Those band kids at your school, maybe they're really funny, but you have no idea because you've judged them as not. Those cheerleaders in the lunchroom, they might be the nicest girls in your grade, but you just assumed they're mean. And that's become who they are in your eyes. Those kids in your small group who come to church all the time, maybe they're struggling with the same things you are, but you'll never know because they're perfect in your opinion. You might be missing out so much about someone by simply letting your opinions and judgments define them. So my challenge to you is to remember this. There's more to others than just your opinion of them. So to help you remember this, I want you to try one of these two things this week. And if you're in my middle school girls small group, I'm going to ask you which one of these that you're going to do. So make sure you watch the video and answer the text. Number 1, worry about yourself. When you find yourself about to form an opinion or make a judgment about somebody else, worry about yourself instead. Just as Jesus reminded those religious leaders, we've all got our own mistakes and missteps to worry about. So instead of focusing on someone else's behavior, interests, or choices that you don't understand, focus on what you're doing and how you can better live out the life that God has for you. And number 2, remove the judgment. Think about who in your world that you've judged or formed an opinion about without truly getting to know them. What if instead of judging them with what you think you know about them, you let the facts define them? What if you only focus on what you know to be true about them? Now, while you may not know much about the other person or group of people right away, you do know this for sure. They are children of God, made in His image and deserving of His love. Start there. That instead of making assumptions, think of them with compassion, love, kindness, and grace, just like Jesus did. Remember, there's more to others than just our opinions of them. So this week, ask yourself this question. What's one way I form opinions about people who are different than me? That's what I want you to chew on this week. So thank you so much for joining me for this lesson. And I'm sorry about the hiccup in the first attempt. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this gets posted in its entirety this morning. A few prayer requests. I don't want to share specific names just because this is a public forum, but we do have one of our youth members whose father was tested positive for COVID-19, and that youth member is showing symptoms. So if you'll just keep that family in your prayers this week as they kind of face uncertainty with COVID-19 and hopefully recover quickly and the symptoms stay mild. And can we just pray for everybody in the world right now? In this time of a pandemic, we've got a lot going on. Some of our seniors are missing out on their graduation. They've already missed prom. A lot of our students are finishing school online or have finished. And teachers like me and your other teacher, Afka, on Sunday mornings, we're trying to teach online, and it's new territory for all of us. So remember to be gracious and patient through all of that. And may you continue to learn and just be present and be still and know that God is God during this time. One more announcement that's really important for all of us to remember is that next Sunday is Mother's Day. So I like to tell my students in class, just in case you haven't thought of how to honor your maternal figure in your life. And want to give a shout out to the teachers that I teach with in the youth program who are moms. Afka, Ashley, Joe, Martha, I'm sure I'm missing people, Amanda. So happy Mother's Day to them next week, and make sure that we know how to honor them even if we're all at home. And then on May 17th, it's going to be our first Sunday in the building worshiping together. We will not have Sunday school in the building. We'll continue to bring it to you live virtually. And I can't wait to be with you guys in person. But until then, just know that I will still continue to provide this for you as a resource to learn. And if you have any prayer requests, please connect with us on Facebook and Instagram and let us know how we can pray for you this week. Every week at the end of Sunday school, I like to go around the room and ask you, how can I pray for you? So even though we are not in person, know that I'm still praying for each one of you. And I love you and I miss you dearly. So will you please pray with me to end our Sunday school time? Heavenly Father, I thank you so much that we are all made in your image and that there's more to us than people's opinions. And may we remember, as we form opinions about other people, that they were made in your image and are so deserving of forgiveness in the future. God, I pray that our words are uplifting to other people, that we are encouragers. And Holy Spirit, I pray that you would empower us to be people who love others no matter what the circumstances are. I thank you so much for sending your son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins, that we might have forgiveness in the future too. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Have a great week, guys. Love you and miss you.